Hey guys, welcome back to the other side of the coin. Look, Sydney times, of course, my match review is going to be a little bit later than usual times in Europe or in UK. So I've had a bit of time to think about the match, and now I really want to express exactly how I feel about it. So look guys, I honestly don't know how we ended up being at 3-3 at the end of full time. I was just sort of thinking, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, so I don't know how much thinking I got to do at that time, but all I was sort of thinking at the end of it was, how did we manage to have 3-3 at the end of it? Considering we were 2-0 up, and that first half, it really showcased exactly what sort of attack that we have. You know, that was still without Ziyech, but you know, the kind of movement that we had up front, the electricity that we had with Timo Werner, and a whole heap of link-up play. It was so amazing to see all of that. And then being 2-0 up from that position, everything went downhill from there. I mean, I'm not really going to say downhill, but we didn't cope with what Southampton was throwing at us after that. Specifically the way they pressed. We know very well that they press hard, they press well. They got us in our last match when we lost 2-0 against them. They pressed us and they suffocated us. As a team, they pressed well, and we simply did not cope with that. And that led to individual errors. They forced the errors on us. But luckily enough, we still managed to come back and take the lead again at 3-2. And then we crumbled once again right at the end of the match and ended up being 3-3. And honestly speaking, this is 2 points dropped again, just like the way we dropped against West Brom. I know we were 3-0 down, we came back in that match, but nonetheless, had we started with a bit of a high tempo sort of stuff, we shouldn't have been in that situation. So overall, guys, I'm hugely disappointed because I come away with that match thinking we should have really seen that match off at 2-0. From 2-0, we really should have pressed on to get 3-0, 4-0 and really demolish them, but it never sort of materialized to happen. So guys, before I get into all the other stuff that I want to talk about, there's 5 talking points that I want to speak about. I'll talk about the lineup a little bit, all the players, talk about a little bit of the player analysis, the ones that I'm not going to touch on, the talking points, and then I'll have a final message before I finish things off. So first of all, the lineup, guys. We had Kepa in the goalkeeper position, which was quite expected for me. I know a lot of people were talking about having Kepa, but for me, Kepa was always going to play this game. At the end of the day, he's still considered as a top keeper for Chelsea. You know, whether we like it or not, you know, he's still competing side by side with Mendy. I know he's had his issues, but at the end of the day, he's still competing with him. In the right side, Scapegoated. For me, it was always going to be Scapegoated, knowing all the firepower that we have up front, and he gives us that balance with that defensive sense of his. And he attacked pretty well, actually, to be honest. It overlapped really well. And also on top of that, you know, Reece James playing quite a few matches over in the international break, so it was always going to be Scapegoated. In the middle, which I will talk about down the track in the talking points, Christensen and Zuma, and Chilwell on the left back. Chilwell actually had a very, very outstanding first half. He was part of the first goal where he puts that ball through for Werner, and overall his impact going forward, he was making some long passes which were brilliant to see. Defensively, he was good as well. Second half, I think he died down a little bit, so that's something that he needs to look at in terms of being consistent throughout the match and not just have one good half and not so good second half. But then again, everyone in the second half wasn't that good at all. In the middle, we had a pivot of Kante and Jorginho, as I expected. Up front, we had Pulisic on the right and Mason Mount on the left. We had Havertz and Timo Werner, which was expected, and thankfully Frank used that combination. We need to keep using that. Their link-up was fantastic to see. But it was a bit surprising to me, and this is what I said in my preview, that Mason Mount in the wings, personally, I don't think is effective. And even more so with Pulisic on the right, we saw in the first half it wasn't very effective. He was far more effective when he was on the left. But I can understand why Mason Mount was starting because of Chilwell, I suppose. If you think from a Frank's perspective, you know, Chilwell bombs up and Mason gives that sort of defensive ability. He's got that engine on him. At the same time, probably Christensen and Zuma, which I'll touch on down the track, I can sort of understand. Frank probably prefers that experience over Tomori. But overall, look guys, probably Mason Mount's the only one that I have some sort of inkling towards, why was he starting in the wings. I've always wanted Mason to start in his natural position. But besides that, the lineup was what it was, and I wasn't too phased about it because I thought we were strong enough to still win. So now, let's get into the talking points. First of all, Timo Werner. Here are some positives. Let's start with some positives before we get into the depressing stuff. Timo Werner, honestly, he was a fantastic player throughout that match, and finally, he's made up for some lost time. He's had that. He was always looking great this season. He just lacked that goal, which I knew was going to come. And I feel like this will be the catalyst of him to start really banging in the goals. And his first goal, the nutmeg to then turn the defender and all that space, the afterburners he put on, and then to basically slide across the defense, across many of the defenders, and then sliding that shot through was brilliant. And even the second goal, fantastic ball from Jorginho, long ball, first time ball, and he controls it, and then he takes it over the keeper and heads it in. Fantastic movement. He gets himself an assist as well in the second half with Havertz squaring the ball. He had another opportunity where he could have squared the ball for Havertz, but nonetheless, overall, man of the match performance for me. And I feel like hopefully he can take this on to the next stage and keep banging in goals, because we need it, because we concede a lot of goals at the back. Havertz, guys, for me, he worked so hard. He worked extremely hard. And obviously he got that goal where Werner squared it for him. Overall, he showed great, I suppose, link up front with Timo Werner and Pulisic and Mason Mount at times. But my issue is defensively. Sometimes he looks very lazy. That first goal that we conceded, which we'll touch on a little bit, he looked a little bit lazy in terms of his ball control, and he gets swamped by Southampton players. And even in our final goal that we conceded, where it was a second ball clearance, he wasn't quick enough to close down the shot. And I feel like this is where he needs to improve a bit. He's a fantastic player, but at the end of the day, he still needs to improve in that side of his game. He does drop deep, tries to help out with the build-up. So overall, it was okay. Obviously, up front, going forward, he was fine. Defensively, he needs to improve. Third talking point, guys. The whole talk about Ziyech. Let's talk about Ziyech. How can we forget that? Hakim Ziyech made his debut off the bench. Honestly, he looked very, very good to me. I was so excited to see him off the bench come out. We were winning 3-2 at that point, so it was happy days at that time. And he looked quite sharp. The way he was sprinting, the way he was making those key passes, he looked overall pretty good. Thankfully, he gets his minutes. And I can't wait till we start seeing against Sevilla. Hopefully he starts where Timo Werner, Havertz, Ziyech and Pulisic, they all play together. But what I want to see from that front four is, when it's the defensive phase, I need them to drop back quickly and help out the midfielders and the defenders, or else we're going to put too much pressure on them. But overall, nice debut for Ziyech. Comes out without any injury concerns, and he looked quite sharp to me. So I cannot wait to see more of Hakim Ziyech down the track, and we're going to need him badly. If one of you guys have seen James Rodriguez match against Everton, you'll see the kind of impact that he has, and that's the kind of impact that I'm hoping Ziyech will have for us. So I cannot wait for that. Now, the whole defensive, talking point number 4, the defensive situation where we've been saying, many people in social media have been saying that far too many times our centre-backs are exposed because our double pivot players bomb up and there's too much gap in between as Southampton presses us. And Southampton, this is, as I said, we did not cope with their pressing. We should have known that that's exactly what they're going to do, and we did not cope with it. Ended up having silly and unforced errors. And when we should have gone long instead of trying to build up from the back, to just relieve the stress, that's where I feel we missed the trick. So in regards to that gap between defense and midfield, this is where the centre backs really need to communicate that if they see Jorginho and Kante bombing up, they need to push up together and reduce that gap, because if there's a counter, then there shouldn't be enough space to basically negotiate with against Southampton. When they don't move up accordingly, what happens is the counter happens, Southampton has a hell of a lot of space, and then the CBs are absolutely exposed because the fullbacks are bombing up as well. And then we've seen it many times where Southampton were 3v2 and they have options to go sideways because the fullbacks are up. So this is where I feel it's a theme. We've seen this quite a lot with Frank Lampard, so I feel like Frank has told Jorginho and Kante to push forward and press. And if that's the case, the centre-backs need to push up, much like what we saw against Crystal Palace, where Thiago Silva, and this is where I feel the experience of Thiago Silva was missed in this particular match, where when he was there, him and Zuma, they did so well against Palace. And I feel like something like that was missing with Southampton, where we did not push up, and especially after 2-0, being 2-0 up, they didn't work hard enough to maintain that high line, and we ended up getting hurt a lot. Now, final talking point, which is Kepa. Guys, after the match, everyone was scapegoating Kepa. Everyone was talking that it was his fault, he's the one why we lost the match. And for me, it feels like this is such a lazy way to put a perspective on this match, because if you go and check the match again, sure, we've considered 3, right? You could look at all three goals, and you could probably say, okay, maybe Mendy saves 1 or 2 here and there. But overall, Kepa, Southampton had 6 shots on target. I think overall they had about 13 shots against their 11. 6 shots on target. There were 3 big saves from Kepa, and 3 were scored. So question needs to be asked, why are we allowing Southampton so much freedom to have that many shots against us, when really, our defense should be watertight? And that match wasn't Kepa's poor, it wasn't even his poorest match. He was actually, not that bad with all the saves that he made as well. But if we look at the first goal, which was a mistake from Kai Havertz, he loses the ball lazily, and from there we don't react quick enough to see what Southampton was doing. They slide the ball through in between Zuma and Christensen. And this is the other issue about the first goal, where these 2 centre-backs are not picking up Danny Ings. Danny Ings goes straight through, and just after that, it's one-on-one with Kepa, and it was going to be a goal. So there was a lot of fundamental issues before you can even put a blame on Kepa. Second goal, completely messed up by Zuma. That was a mistake after a very long time, so it can happen. But at the same time, you can't completely blame Kepa on that, because that pass really put Kepa on a bad position. Yes, you can say after that, Kepa could have done better to stop it. And then the last goal, Reece James gives away that foul. And then when that ball comes through, even our defending, everyone was sitting deep. There was no one prepared for the second ball. When we headed that clearance out, it fell right in front of Southampton players, and all the Southampton players were lined up at the edge of the box. Any one of them could have taken the shot. And this is where I feel the defensive structure. I mean, what are they thinking when they're defending that? When that ball's coming through and they're defending, they should have a line of 2. You have not everyone step back and defend in one line. You want to have some that are sitting in that second line, where if there is a second ball, they get the ball and they can, pump it forward and clear it out. So I feel like these are the key mistakes that we're doing before we can even start blaming a keeper, because I'm telling you, if Mendy is there in the keeping spot, these mistakes are still happening. We're going to put Mendy in a lot of pressure as well. So guys, overall, what I want to say about this match is we've now dropped 2, against West Brom and now Southampton. These are 2 matches we really should have got 3 points. And if you look at those 3 points, if we get them in the table, we would be top of the table actually, 14 points or something like that. So Frank really needs to work on this, or it's going to hurt us throughout this season. We've got some big games coming up. We can't be making these mistakes. And Frank really needs to start sorting these things out, in-game management in terms of what happens when we see stuff like when opposition's pressing us and whatnot. So we've got to try and work on these, and this season will honestly go away. So guys, let me know what your thoughts are about this particular match. Your lineup, thoughts about the player analysis that I've made, the talking points that I've talked about, how you feel about that. Comment below in the comment section. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, smash the like button. If you're here for the first time, subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay in touch with all my content. Until next time, see ya.